Ephesians 5:11 says, have nothing to do with the works of darkness, but rather expose them. That's what you and I are called to do, expose the works of darkness. We came back last month from our first family holiday for many, many years. We went down to a small coastal village in Cornwall, right on the very tip of this country, called Carbis Bay. 2 months before, at Carbis Bay, is where all the G7 leaders met. Why? They've only ever met at Camp David before, and I think once at Biarritz. But this time they came to Carbis Bay and stayed at the Carbis Bay Hotel. The police closed off and the Secret Service closed off all of Carbis Bay, this small coastal Cornwall village, 1 week before the G7 leaders got there. They stopped the buses, they stopped the trains, they stopped all the traffic. No one was allowed through there, except for 18 Babylonian witches dressed in red. These 18 witches marched throughout the streets of Carbis Bay on the day that the G7 leaders were all there. And the police allowed them through the barricade to march right up to the G7 leaders who were waiting for them in the Carbis Bay Hotel courtyard. And exactly the same day, a few beaches up, just a few miles, they found a body on the bottom of the cliff at a place called Hell's Mouth. Unidentified, unexplained, unreported. Do you see what I see? Matthew 4:4. We talked about it once before. The Spirit leads Christ Yahuah out into the desert, and there the devil appeared before Christ and tried to make him a deal. He said to Yahuah, fall down and worship me, and I'll give you all the kingdoms of the earth and their glory. And Christ looked at the devil in the face, Hayel, the howler, in Hebrew, Satan, and said, away from me, Satan. Now this same devil makes the same deal to all the kings of this earth. And the only difference is they take the deal. Daniel 3 shows me one thing. One verse in Daniel 3. Again, we talked about it before. Daniel's living through, in his time, he's living through this exact moment, but it's also a prophetic time. It's a time for the end. The end time. Daniel 3 verse 3 says this. It shows me that they're all in it together. So the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the councillors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image. To you it is commanded, worship the gold image. That 1-2 verses in Daniel 3 verse 3, shows me that they're all in it together. The magistrates, the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the councillors, the treasurers, all the officials. The fourth beast, the fourth empire, it's never really gone away. It's just gone underground. It's just changed its name, hanging on its office door. The Roman emperor, well, he's just a grey pope. And the Roman army are just the Jesuits. They've always been around. The Queen of Heaven worshippers have always been here. Jeremiah talks about it 3 times. The Babylonian worshippers, the Queen of Heaven worshippers, they've always been in charge. They've always been with us. They've always been around. You just got to see them. Jeremiah speaks about them 3 times. Let's read once. Jeremiah 44, verse 16. As for the word that you have spoken to us in the name of Yahuah, we will not listen to you, Jeremiah, but we will certainly do whatever has gone out of our own mouth, to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven and pour our drink offerings to her. As we have done, we and our fathers, our kings and our princes. Verse 22. So Yahuah could no longer bear it, because of the evil of your doings, and because of the abominations which you have committed. Therefore your land is a desolation, an astonishment, a curse, and without an inhabitant, as it is to this day. These Queen of Heaven worshippers, they're not new. You might have thought they were a few hundred years old, but they're not. They've been around since the Canaanite times. Canaanite, Assyrian, Babylonian, Egyptian. They've always been with us and always been in control. They are the kings of the earth. Only one thing that matters here. It's what do you see? Proverbs 14, verse 15, one verse. There's 2 types of men here, 2 types of men in this world. All that matters, guys, is what do you see? Do you see what I see? Proverbs 14, verse 15, the simple believe every word, but the prudent man considers well his steps. 2 types of people in this world. The simple, who believe every news story they hear, every governmental, every media news story they hear, or the prudent man, who considers well his next step, every step he's about to take. That's all that's on the line here. The only thing that's on the line is, what do you see? What do you see? What do you perceive? What do you discern? What do you feel? Ezekiel 8, 9 and 10. It blows me away. It talks about one of the worst times, the worst time that the book of Revelation talks about. That's going to sweep across the face of this earth and all those that dwell on the face of this earth, except for one body of people. One special body of people. Male, female, children, they're unique, they're special. They have a unique name and a special character. Ezekiel 8, verse 6. Son of man, do you see what they are doing? The great abominations that the house of Israel commits here, to make me, Yahuwah, go far away from my sanctuary. Now turn again, you will see greater abominations. So he brought me to the door of the court, and when I looked, there was a hole in the wall. Then he said to me, Son of man, dig, dig, dig into the wall. And when I dug into the wall, there was a door. And he said to me, Go in and see the wicked abominations which they are doing there. Then he said to me, Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel do in the dark? Every man in the room of his idols. For they say that Yah does not see us. Yah has forsaken the land. And he said to me, Turn again, and you will see greater abominations that they are doing. So he brought me to the door of the north gate of the Lord's house, Yah. And to my dismay, women were sitting there weeping for Tammuz. So he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, Yah. And there at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of the Lord Yah, and their faces towards the east. And they were worshipping the sun towards the east. Therefore I also will act in fury. My eye will not spare, nor will I have pity. And though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, I will not hear them. Ezekiel 9. Then he, Yahuwah, called out in my hearing with a loud voice, saying, Let those who have charge over the city draw near, each with a deadly weapon in his hand. And suddenly, 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with his battle axe in his hand. One man among them was clothed with linen, and with a writer's inkhorn at his side. They went in and stood beside the bronze altar. Now the glory of the God of Israel, Yahuwah, has gone up from the cherub where it has been, to the threshold of the temple. And he called to the man clothed with linen, who had the writer's inkhorn at his side. And he said to him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done within. To the others he said in my hearing, Go after him through the city and kill. Do not let your eyes spare, nor have any pity. Utterly slay old and young men, maidens and little children, and women. But do not come near anyone on whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. So they began with the elders who were before the temple. This is the mark of Yah. He places it on the man and women. There's neither male nor female. He places the mark of Yah, Yahuwah, on the foreheads of the men, the women, and children who have one unique attribute within their spirits. They sigh and cry for the abominations of the land. These aren't people who are building churches. These aren't people who are evangelizing or even ministering. These are people who sigh and cry. This is what puts the seal of Yah upon their foreheads. These are people that sigh and cry for the abominations of the land. The abominations that the kings of the earth do across all those that dwell upon the face of this earth. I think about the two great kings. These were men, these were unique men, unique and special in character. They had one thing in common. They had one mission, one purpose, one job to do for the kingdom of Yah. 2 Kings 23, verse 24 and 25. These two great kings, Jehu and this mere child, this mere boy, Josiah, 8 years old when he came to be king, and around 16 years later, 18 years later, that makes him around 26, he comes across the word of the Lord, and it sets him on fire. The word of Yahuwah sets this mere boy on fire. Both Jehu and Josiah has got one thing and one thing only: to rid the land of witchcraft and idolatry. That's their calling. That's their destiny. That's the calling of the kingdom of Yah for these two men, one in each different time zone, to rid the land of witchcraft and idolatry. Two Kings 23, verse 24 and 25. Moreover, Josiah put away those who consulted mediums and spiritualists, the household gods and idols, all the abominations. Now before him there was no king like him, who turned to the Lord with all his heart, with all his soul, and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses. Nor after him did any arise like him. That's this mere child, this mere young man, Josiah. There was none like him. None like him that turned back to the Lord, that turned to the Lord with all his heart, with all his soul, and with all his might. He had to rid the land like Jehu. He had to rid the land of witchcraft and idolatry. But a simple man believes everything that he hears. The simple man believes everything that he reads. Yet the prudent man he's careful what his next step will be. He's like the tribe of Issachar. We talked about it quite a few times. David's building a strong army. David knows to take on the might of all of Yah's people, the enemy of Yah's people, to take on the might of all the enemies of Yah's people. He's got to build a really strong army, not just mighty men of valor, mighty men of war, men prepared for war, but there's one unique tribe. We talked about it before, the tribe of Issachar. There's 200 captains. 200 captains from the tribe of Issachar. Talks about 36,000 men in all. But 200 captains, it says these were men of understanding who knew the times and to teach Israel what they ought to do. David must have relied on these 200 captains of the tribe of Issachar, men who had understanding of the times to teach Israel what they ought to do. Because there's a time for peace and there's a time for war. There's a time to love and there's a time to hate. And there's nothing new under the sun. You know, as me and Storm and Dallas and Jesse walked along the coastal path in Carbis Bay, Cornwall, on what I perceive could be our last holiday ever, All that was upon me in that beautiful place was, how do I share what type of destruction is coming upon this earth? How do I share it with my children and my wife? They all know. They all know. But we're walking along the coastal paths. We're trying to take in the beauty of Cornwall. But all I could think about was the time that this world is in. There's a time for peace. There's a time for war. And I know that Yahuah is looking for his elect. These are the special ones. The prophetic books, Daniel, Revelation, they all talk about the holy people, the elect, the saints. They have many names. But these are men and women and children who sigh and cry for the abominations of the land. They have the commandment of Yah and the testimony of Yahushua on their lips and in their heart. And they're serving Elohim with all their heart, with all their mind, and with all their might. In the Greek, I love what it says about the elect. It says the elect means selected, favorite, chosen. Chosen by Yahuah for his purpose, his calling, his destiny. And all that matters here is one thing. What do you see? What do you discern? What do you perceive? I'll never give you opinion. I'll never give you a hunch. All that matters is, what do you see? Because I knew what I saw, what I perceived, what I discerned as I walked through the streets of Carbis Bay, Cornwall. As we watched on the internet 2 months earlier, 18 Babylonian witches march right up to the 7 leaders of the world. But all that matters here is, what do you see?